All right, I technically saw more than 13 movies in February, but we're going to save Dune. And none of these other movies are close. I'm just saying. What's up, Flick fans? Welcome back to the channel. Short month, still watched quite a bit of movies. Is it better than January? Because that was really rough. If you guys like this series, let me know by dropping that like down below, leaving a comment, and sharing this. Send it to your mom. She'll be pleased. Or grandma.
Oh my God, that was so funny!
I tend his grave.
I talked to him.
I wish I was with you.
Start with Lisa Frankenstein. It's like a Tim Burton movie from the 1980s. What do you want me to say? There is a cult following that I know this movie is going to have down the road. The style of it all, the quirky antics of our characters. A lot of fun, to be honest with you. Now, I did have some issues with the story, the way that it progresses, the wasted opportunity with some side characters. I think Cole Sprouse does a nice job, but the real MVP here is Kathryn Newton. Without Kathryn Newton, I don't know if the style would have been enough to compensate for a very lackluster script at times. Newton's performance is genuinely charming, heartwarming, even though she's not a very likable character and she has this darkness to her, but also this like maniacal feel to her. You just know she's going to go off the rails eventually, and that's fun. And she adds and injects that charm into an unlikable character, and it ultimately becomes a somewhat compelling story with some issues. Again, I had a lot of issues with the script, and I wasn't laughing. There are moments of humor where, you know, it even pauses for the audience to laugh, and I'm just sitting there like, yeah, it's not all that funny. But I really love Kathryn Newton in the role, and so all of that being said, because she is so daggone good in Lisa Frankenstein, I'm going to go okay tier for this film. Starting out,
Okay!
We were having a very pleasant day.
Land of Bad. Did you see any marketing for this film? Because I went into it, and apparently they made it the Regal Mystery Movie and the AMC Mystery something, and a lot of people saw it, and they were like, oh, well, it's actually not as bad as the title suggests it would be. It's Land of Okay. I enjoy a good war film. I enjoy Russell Crowe, some Hemsworths in the movie, Hemsworths. Liam and Luke, and it's a very straight-lined, easy-to-comprehend war movie. A special ops mission goes wrong. One of our characters is kind of stuck there, and the other one, in Russell Crowe, who's on the other side of the line, is having to talk him through this insane situation that does get more bloody, way more brutal, and way more intense than I ever imagined. And some really surprising things happen in this film to certain characters, and I'm like, I didn't see that coming. I didn't think you would push the limits. This movie surprised me. Maybe it's because I knew nothing about it when I watched it like 2 weeks late. I'm like, all right, we need to fill the void of February films. Let's watch Land of Bad.
Say what?
And it actually ended up being one of the better films I saw in the month of February because of the really solid performances, the straightforward and very easy to comprehend story, and the fact that they did push the limits. If you've seen war movies before and it's not your thing, you're definitely not going to like this one because it's just so simple. Then in my head I debated, but I'm actually going to go good tier just because I didn't think it would be anything like this.
Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom?
Bob Marley, One Love. It's a biopic. It's Bob Marley overcoming a lot of obstacles in his life to become one of the most revolutionary singer-songwriters of all time. And you have a really good cast across the board. Without this cast, I don't know if this movie would have worked at all. Lashana Lynch is fantastic. I honestly needed a bit more of her character, and everyone beyond Bob Marley, it's very surface-level development, but the performance at hand here is elevating these characters on screen, so she was great. And obviously, Kingsley Ben-Adir. If this film, the story, was a little more compelling, if they were able to dive deeper into these characters, even Marley, who gets development, but I felt as if they expected everyone to know all about him prior to going into this movie, to where we just didn't learn all that much beyond those notes that a lot of biopics hit. Now, granted, there's some style in that, which I really appreciated, but Kingsley Ben-Adir gives a performance that could have been Oscar-worthy, if it wouldn't have come out at this time and the story would have been a bit better. At the end of the day, I enjoyed the experience more than I did the writing at times. And again, I expected a bit more depth, but I'm going to put it on the okay tier because the two leads were just so daggone good in the film.
What the hell happened last night?
Okay, Abby?
Last night.
Beautiful Wedding with Dylan Sprouse and Virginia Gardner. I had to look at that. We're going to talk about Madam Web, but I didn't think anything could be worse than Madam Web. Our two characters wake up after a crazy night in Vegas. They're newlyweds. Some crazy stuff went down. It's like The Hangover, isn't it, Austin? Is it going to be as funny as The Hangover? No. And I'm a big Sprouse defender. I enjoy both of those guys quite a bit. This movie is absolutely terrible. I didn't know it was a sequel to Beautiful Disaster until I was about 10 minutes in. I'm like, oh, I saw what they did with the title, and I'm like, why would they do that? That's weird. Oh, it's a sequel. Oh, that made it. It's probably my fault. Look, it's my fault that I didn't get some of the callbacks and references to the first film. It's my fault that I didn't know what their relationship was, and I didn't understand the complexity within the relationship. But guess what? The movie stinks regardless. This is one of the worst romantic comedies. The performances, they're fine. It's the characters. They are so annoying. They're so across the board. Everything they did, they just got under my skin. I'm just like, I want to stop this movie so bad because everything they're doing is a headache, and they're going for comedy all throughout the movie. It never hits. Well, one or two things that are really over the top, and I'm like, that's insane. But does it make for a good movie? No. I wanted to like this. It's awful. It's awful. Let's put Beautiful, whatever it is, the crappy wedding, whatever.
Orion, I'm gonna get you to overcome your fears if it kills me. Whoa. My job is the most fundamental.
I had a crazy experience with Orion in the Dark. This went from being one of the most heartfelt and charming, warming movies I've seen in quite a while in the first half, to where I was absolutely loving it. I'm like, we could be looking at like an 8 or even an 8.5 on my scale. I mean, I loved this film. I love what they were doing. Orion facing his fears. I mean, he's afraid of everything at the beginning, and who's not afraid of the dark? But you had the character of the dark, voiced by Paul Walter Hauser, who's doing a very heavy Seth Rogen impersonation. Jacob Tremblay, who is amazing as our lead, and all of these different voices. Sleep, Sweet Dreams. It's like Rise of the Guardians. You remember that film? It's the same concept. They're going on this adventure, except they're taking this little boy with them. And then it tries to get a little more layered when it didn't have to be that layered. And this is written by Charlie Kaufman. So you know right there, they're going to try to do a lot. And they did. And the longer it went on, I'm like, you're ruining a good thing. You're trying to do too much. There's a story within a story, but then there's another story on top of that story. And by the time you get to the end, there's something else that happens, and you're like, that's the point to where you pushed it. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to remove a star for the way that you took this. But that being said, if your child is looking for something that is a little less geared toward kids than what you normally see, it has something for adults, but maybe it becomes too much at the end, they'll understand it when they're older for the most part, but even I didn't understand why they made some of the decisions that they did at the end. Still, I think it's a good animated movie. It does what it does. It hits that target audience. It goes a little beyond that. It just became a little too convoluted by the end when it was trying to be complex. So I want to go good tier, but it could have been great.
You okay?
Yeah, great. Okay, I'll be right back.
Then you have The Tiger's Apprentice, which is like the exact opposite of what you want a good animated movie to be, because everything about it feels cheap while you're watching, except for the voice cast. I mean, Henry Golding's in this movie. I really like the mentorship aspect of his character, and there's something tragic that happens at the beginning. It reminds me of that scene in Big Hero 6, like the emotional gut punch of that, except I didn't quite feel the emotion as much as our character did. And then from that point, the movie just goes completely off the rails. Cheap animation, a cheap-ish, not very well-written story, a story we've seen before. They try to do some action sequences that are pretty cool, but because it just looks like it does, it doesn't hit that chord that it's going for. He's been guided by a mythical tiger. There's Zodiac warriors. They're going up against this evil force. All of that stuff sounds cool on paper, and I thought the trailer was pretty cool. But man, as this movie was going on, the longer it went on, the more I'm like, yeah, this is steeping very low for kids who are probably better than this. So I'm going The Tiger's Apprentice on the bad tier. It was just, it was a mess.
My brother's dying. He hasn't talked in years.
I'm so sorry. My wife passed away.
My dad died when I was 3.
Christ, it ain't a competition.
Suncoast. You have this young girl, she and her mom are caring after her brother, and there's something going on health-wise with her brother that takes her mom's attention away from her, and she is solely focused on him. But she expects her daughter to be there with her and with him as he's going through this tragedy of sorts, and she's trying to deal with it internally, and that's a hard thing to ask for someone of any age, but especially for someone of her age that's getting caught up in things that teenagers do. Her friends who are, they feel like the fake friends at the beginning of the film, but some of them are authentic. Some of them actually care about her, so that kind of surprised me. I didn't love the teen drama stuff as it went on, but thankfully they didn't focus on that as much. It was much more so her dealing with everything happening within her family, and then her relationship with this random guy that she meets in Woody Harrelson's character, who, at the beginning it's kind of like, all right, what's he doing? But then it's very clear that he is trying to help get her through this, and they feed off of each other in a very interesting way. So he didn't quite have the presence I expected him to have, but this was a really compelling story. It's a compelling story that feels familiar, feels a little conventional, and by the numbers when you get into the teenage drama of it all. But Suncoast provided the right amount of emotion, the right amount of surprise, and it ended up being one of the best movies I've seen this year. Does that make it a great film? I wouldn't go that far, but it's really good. So I'm going to go Suncoast on the good tier. And yeah, what a nice surprise on Hulu.
Mr. Malloy, this is Mia Harper. I'd like to meet with you to discuss your case.
Tyler Perry's Mea Culpa, his version of Mea Culpa. The main character's name is Mia. A criminal defense attorney must choose between family, duty, and her own dangerous desires when she takes on the case of an artist accused of murder. That sounds like something you would see in a movie about a movie, and this movie is something that you would see in like Tropic Thunder, maybe? It takes itself so seriously, but the dialogue and the characters and the motivations and the nonsense. I was so bored in the first 20 minutes. I'm like, this is just dragging. I don't care about what anybody's saying right now. None of this is compelling. Like I said, it's taking itself so seriously. But then they introduce this artist. He's played by Trevante Rhodes, who's a really good actor, but everything's so overboard. They're so over dramatic. There's a scene that was going around on Twitter where something's going down, but it's put together in a way that is just the ultimate level of cheese. Now, if the movie would have leaned into that cheese and not taken itself so seriously, this could have been kind of funny. And maybe that's what Tyler Perry intended for this to be, so overboard cheesy, but taking itself so seriously that it's fun and entertaining. And some of these Tyler Perry movies do that. I get a kick out of a few of them. Sometimes the comedy works. This is one of the worst movies I've seen in years. It was absolutely atrocious from a dialogue standpoint. It was so dumb. It was funny. It's a dumb, fun kind of film, but you got to get past the first 30 minutes that were just a snooze. Mea Culpa, awful film. I didn't review it because I didn't want to waste my time.
You said you owed me for the time I did inside.
Code 8, Part 2. Robbie Amell, Stephen Amell, two cousins going out making a movie together. The first movie was kind of a hit, a little bit, kind of a sci-fi-ish feel to it. This film, both of these movies have an X-Men type of feel to them. People going after these superpowered beings, okay. This one specifically goes from X-Men to Logan because they are, the little girl, she may actually be the main character of this film. You've got your simple storyline covering up a murder, corrupt cops, this young girl trying to avenge a death of someone that she cares about, Robbie Amell's character helping her, and the development from the first movie to the second movie, in a way, it took these characters to a more interesting place. I think the action was pretty cool. Not as action-packed as the first, but I believe the story was better. But both of these movies really struggle with trying to do something that allows them to stand out, other than just working on a smaller budget, people enjoying both of the Amels being in these films and playing these characters, and a little bit of an emotional impact at the end, the way that they went about it. But I found myself in Act 2 and going into Act 3 just not caring as much as the story wanted me to care, because there is kind of a blandness to these characters and this world. That being said, I can't look at this film and say, well, it's a bad movie, because it really wasn't a bad movie, and it wasn't a bad experience. It's fine. It does what it needs to do, and just like the first, it works. I'm going to put Code 8 Part 2 on the okay tier.
Look at that. This is actually a depiction of a swan. But what do you see? What do you feel?
I feel you don't live here.
Upgraded. Camila Mendez, a romantic comedy on Amazon. It did well. She's an ambitious intern. She wants to be in the world of art. She gets a crazy opportunity at the beginning of this film. She gets upgraded to first class, and she meets a guy by the name of Will. And well, you've seen this movie 1,000 times. I've seen this movie 1,000 times. I think the performances are fine. They're sweet. She's really likable. He's really likable. There are certain things about the story that fall into such a deep pit of cliches. I was rolling my eyes multiple times, but I can't sit here and say people aren't going to enjoy this. If you like this kind of thing, we get like 3 a month on Netflix. At least we used to. This one's on Amazon, but I feel like you'll enjoy this, and I feel like a lot of people will like it. It's very simple. It's not my genre. It's not my kind of movie. There wasn't anything about it that allowed it to stand out from the crowd other than really likable actors. So I'm not going to say I loved it, but, I feel like a lot of people will. So I'm going upgraded on the meh tier. It upgraded from bad, at least, right?
Girls! It's the last body shot competition, so we are going to salt you up.
I've had it with love.
Drive Away Dolls. One of the Coen brothers directs this movie. There's a Coen brother, not plural, movie coming out this year. Why are people not talking about it more? I feel as if this wasn't directed by Ethan Coen, a lot of people would have found it to be a mess. It's all about these 2 girls that go on this trip to Tallahassee. One of them, well, she just needs to loosen up. She's doing her own thing. I mean, at the beginning, the first conversation she has, I'm like, you need to loosen up. So Margaret Qualley's character takes her to Tallahassee on this... and she is a wild child at the beginning of this film. They go on a sexcapade of sorts. People may watch this and be like, all right, that's way more R-rated than I expected it to be. It's very R-rated, which... at times may not be everyone's cup of tea, but my issue with this film is not even necessarily that. I love Margaret Qualley. I love Geraldine Viswanathan. She is great in this film. She does a nice job playing the type of character who's not really willing to try new things at the beginning of the film, but she loosens up as we go. It's a classic buddy comedy type of feel, and the Coen style, a very unique style, allows them to play on that comedy, which just wasn't really... I didn't respond to this type of comedy. It wasn't really working for me as we were going. And then when things start to go wild and this briefcase gets involved and the stakes begin to raise, the antics are going crazy, and I just wasn't feeling either one. And while the journey at the end of the day did get better as it went, I just wasn't feeling these characters. I wasn't feeling the humor all that much, and I didn't really respond to the style, which is what often gets me with the Coen brothers movies. So maybe Ethan needs his brother back, because I'm putting this one on the meh tier. It's not a bad movie by any means, but I expected more.
I certainly hope you dance as well as you dress.
There's only one way to find out.
Argylle, on the other hand, Ellie Conway's writing a novel that all of a sudden is real life, and the stakes are high, blah, blah, blah. Did you watch my review? You know how I feel about this one. It was very disappointing. Bryce Dallas Howard and Sam Rockwell have really good chemistry. The moment he enters the film, it automatically becomes more interesting. Well, you know what? I'll backtrack on that and say the first however many minutes with Henry Cavill, who is not in this film, all that often. Just a warning for you guys who haven't seen it. That should have been the movie. Like, that little thing that we got, that would have been a more interesting film.
I'm just saying.
But everything beyond that with Ellie Conway, I mean, Matthew Vaughn has a very distinct style that oftentimes really works, and he thrives in the spy genre. But this one tried to do too much. It tried to be too much, to where it just feels like it's all over the place. And that overboard style that he often nails, it kind of felt like a disaster at points in this film. The tone, all over the place. The humor wasn't really working. And Bryce Dallas Howard, as good as she is at times, occasionally she feels miscast. Is it Matthew Vaughn's worst made movie? Arguably, I would say yes, but it wasn't a complete disaster. It was just kind of a disaster, especially for the budget.
This is a disaster!
So Argylle, I'm debating between bad and meh, but because my hype was so high, I'm gonna go bad tier.
Hey, come on. Get your stuff. Let's go.
This is a load of barnacles.
This movie stinks. It's bad. Not good. No bueno. Just skip it, miss it, and if you have the DVD, destroy it. Look, I'll defend the cast. Dakota Johnson's done good work in the past. Sydney Sweeney's done great work in the past. So on and so forth. It's a mess from start to finish. Is it as tragically bad as some other movies on this list? No. Are there redeeming moments, like individual still frames?
Maybe.
When you look at the budget and just, for me, it's more of a horrible reflection on Sony and this crappy off-brand or off-universe that they're trying. It's not off-brand. It's very on-brand. But I would argue that Spider-Verse is more off-brand because those movies are fantastic. This movie stinks. It stinks. It's horrible. Really bad.
He stinks, and I don't like him.
When we are comparing it to big movies that people go to the theater to see that are blockbusters, it's one of the worst that I've seen in years. So we're going to put it on the awful tier because, it stinks. We're going to rank these films. If you're still here, I appreciate it. I really do. Dropping a like tells me you want more of these monthly type videos. Would you like to see me do TV if I ever watch that many? I don't know. Here we go. All of these movies are so bad. Beautiful Wedding at the bottom because I just hated their relationship. Mea Culpa next because her name's Mia. And Madam Web, look, it's not the worst movie of the month. It's just one of the worst blockbusters of the decade. On the bad tier, let's go with The Tiger's Apprentice, below Argylle, both bad. Do not watch them. On the meh tier, upgraded, or I'm going to go upgraded slightly below the Coen brother movie. Just one. It's just one of them. On the okay tier, I'm going to go Code 8 Part 2, slightly above the Bob Marley film that, again, I was a little disappointed in, but both of those I would say I expected a little more from. Lisa Frankenstein overcomes some issues with the script with just awesome lead performances. Now, here we go. Here's the good tier. These are movies that I thoroughly enjoyed. Definitely Orion on the bottom, just because it had so much more potential than what it actually ended up being. Followed by Land of Bad. A big surprise. It just came out of nowhere. Very simple, but it did what it had to do. And then number one, I would say, go watch this movie right now. It's on Hulu. It's very sweet. If you don't like coming-of-age stories, I don't know if you're going to love it. It doesn't break the mold there, but very, very emotional. Suncoast. That's my number one movie of February. But again, I saw Dune Part 2, and I saw Spaceman. We'll be talking about both of those on the March tier list, and that's going to be packed with hopefully some heavy hitters, maybe some disappointments, and maybe some big stinkers. We'll have to see. Thanks so much for watching. Appreciate you big time. I'll see you soon.